Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. In this video, I'm going to show you the power of adaptive cards with the help of our two components. In my case, it could be Power Automate, which can basically help me to communicate between my adaptive card and my backend application. And at the end, since I'm more of a Business Central guy at the end, so I'm going to keep the backend application as Business Central in my case. But to begin with, let me just tell you one thing that the focus would be here to see how adaptive card works. It is not essential that you use Power Automate in the backend for flowing data from one way to another, or you can, on the other hand, it's not essential that you use Business Central only. So yeah, the other two things are completely optional. You can them with anything you want to do. All right, so let's jump to that. But before that, just a quick introduction about myself. My name is Rishabh Shukla. So I'm presently working with Oli Technologies as a managing consultant. Apart from that, that's my Git profile. And I've recently started blogging and putting videos and all stuff. So yeah, that's the area where you can go in and see my blogs and video. So feel free to browse in. All right, so let's jump to the business use case, and then I'll show you how it is working, and then I'll give you this theory behind that. So in a business scenario, let's take an example. I have an application, or I'll say I have a CRM with me, in which I create a quotation, and once they create the quotation, they send that quotation to the customer with an email, and the customer can accept the order, and we want to give them a visibility that they can accept the order only by being in the Outlook screen, okay, or on the email. They can put certain information on it, and then there should be an option within that email which can allow them to create the sales order for us in the system if they accept it. If they don't, there can be another options too. So this could be one of the use cases. So in my example, since I don't have a working CRM with me, so I've used Flow. So in my case, I just created a manual flow, nothing too uh, big or different. So in my case, let's assume I have a simple flow which is going to trigger my sales quotation on an email to my customer. Okay, so I'm just going to run this flow. So normally it could be a backend application like Salesforce, it could be CRM of D365. So I'll say run flow, done. So now let's say it succeeded. Let's go back. See, I have the email now. Sometimes takes a while. Come on. Okay. All right. So now I have the email. So if I open this up, there you go. So now it says that thank you for showing your interest in doing business with us, blah, blah, blah. And now I have the item information. Okay. Now this could be dynamic. And then, oh, sorry. So now I can ask the customer if they want to put any special remarks on it. I can say, please ensure the quality is good, right? And then we can say that, do you have an expected receipt date? I'll say 24th of July. And now he could do one more thing. He'll say, okay, I agree to that. And I'll say, create a sales order for me, right? So it says working on it. And there, you see, it says the action is completed successfully. Now let's understand what happened in the backend. If I go back to my Business Central client, so 5 there. So I have a new sales order with me now. So it's again a level of automation. Maybe in your case, cases to cases scenario may get differ. You don't want to create a sales order right away, or you want to run a workflow process by this. I mean, up to you. Implications can be or scenarios can be different. So in my case, I'm just showing you that what it has done. So it has basically created order with 3 lines. Okay. Again, don't go too much with the data. Some of the information in my uh, flow could be hard coded just for the sake of testing. So yeah, in all and over, once I have the sales order, let's go back to my email. So in here, you can see I've got another email, and here it says that your order is placed, sales order, this order information, blah blah blah. Now export as PDF. If I go here, that's a simple Word document, right? So now this is where I wanted to show you the power of adaptive cards. Now the information that I have been showing you here and the UI that I am showing you here requires zero amount of coding. I will not say exactly zero. It has some technical utilization in between, but you can design the UI without coding anything on the back end. Okay, so now let's understand what is adaptive card. So adaptive card in a general sense give you a native UI which is rendered based on a JSON schema. Okay, now in a simple language, let me go back and show you how I did this thing, and so that it for functional guys who are not too much into technical information doesn't go as a surprise or a bouncer to them. All right, so first of all, you have to go, and there are more than one tools for doing this. Okay, so you go adaptivecards.io.designer. Okay, now they have bunch of examples with them. Okay, so yeah, if you are new to that, just go here, io and scroll down. You will see bunch of examples and bunch of cases. Okay, that's one thing. And you can use a bot, you can use it on Teams. It is basically, a much vast and easier way of presenting your data to the customer, okay, or to a user whomsoever is on the other side of the table. So let's see how I did build this. Okay, so normally when you say an adaptive card, you have to select the host of the application. So in my case, it was Outlook. Or in the other cases, you can also use Cortana. You can say, I would like to put it on Teams. One point of remark here, though, if you are using Business Central and you want to show adaptive cards of Business Central on Teams, I would suggest not to use adaptive cards because usually the URL of Business Central is now very nicely integrated with Teams. So avoid using them in such scenarios because you really don't want to rework your cases. But yeah, in other cases, if you have any backend application, you wanted to send the information using adaptive card, this is your place. All right, so let's go back. Normally when you create an adaptive card, you can start it by doing it with a sample. Okay, so in my case, I selected this. So let's understand what is this. So usually I would like to say this will be an hard-coded text. Now, how did I bring that text? So on the left side, I'll see that it has a designer with the elements on it. So this is a text block. I'll just click here. I'll just show one how I did that. That will give you an idea. I'll drag it here, and if I go here, that's my text block. The soon I have added this block here. On the right side, you can see the structure of the card. This is very important to understand what is there and how the structure looks like. Okay, so in my case, I have one text block, which is good. It has the text this. So if I click here, you can see the text of thank you, blah, 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 is written on the text property. If I go here, I can say this is my new text, right? Now, there are other things which you have to consider. Let's not go into too much technical details, but some of them are essential. I'll show them very quickly to you. Now, as part of the layout, you can say the size, it has to be large. So if you do this, and if I scroll down about the style, I say the size, it has to be large. I think we can make the layout size as smaller. Yeah. Now the color. Now keep in mind, to make the app easier for someone who is not completely a technical, the options are minimized and you know guarded by some easier way. Okay, so you might not see red, blue, green, yellow, all the colors here, but get the idea. It means if you select good, the color is going to be changed to green. If you say it's a warning, it will be changed to an orange. If you say it could be an attention, then your information will be in red color. Okay, right. So these are certain properties you can play around with. I'll just close this for a moment. Okay, now let's understand what else do we have. Now in this case, I have a column set. Now, when I say a column set, let's understand it very simply. A column, if I click here, so you can see this is one column set, right? And under one column set, I have a column. Now, this could be my one column, okay? Now, under this column, I have one image. Okay, so don't bother how you create all these things. You don't have to go always with this column set and rule set and everything. You can just drag and drop your boxes here and everything will be constructed here right away. Okay, so yeah, and always try to go with samples. That will be much easier for you to understand how things are there. Okay, all right, so that's one thing. Now let's understand what do we have here. Now these are the information that we are already showing to them. They cannot change it. Now, there could be some information where we might want to give them some input to us. Now, these information are called input boxes. Now, they have a whole complete section for this here. Okay. Now, in case you want simple input text, you can click here, and then it will appear a box like this. And then you can say, put up your remarks here. Okay, and give this an ID. I'll say order comment. Okay, now consider this. Whenever you want to access the value of this box, you have to access with this ID in a simple sense. Okay, it's like I'll try to make it easier to understand for both functional and technical at the same time. So for technical guys, if you want to access the value of this box, that will be the name of your variable. Okay, using which you can basically do that, or you can also put that into the data context. I'll show that to you in a minute. Now let's scroll down. Now again, this is again an input box. An input box with a type of date. Okay, so click here, drop it here. So you can see how easier it is. Okay, and let's understand what do we have here. So if I go and I wanted to create an action, scroll down, click somewhere on the card, and here I'll say add an action. Now action could be of three types. Usually you want to open a URL, you want to show a different card, okay, or you want to run HTTP request. So in our case, when I click on this button of creating a sales order, it is basically communicating to my Power Automate and creating a document for me. So looks like it's kind of consuming an API. So in my case, the button will be of type HTTP. Okay, now let's see what do we have on the side of technical. So now there are two aspects of this whole thing. One is that you have a payload editor, which means that you have a schema of the adaptive card. And of other thing could be, since there is a schema of a JSON, you also have a JSON with the data on it, which can basically use that schema to parse the values in it. So first things first, we'll go to the payload editor. So usually a payload editor has certain information. If I'll say don't go too much into details for it, it gets automatically constructed. You don't have to really change any information. I have although one information for you. So this is the same JSON. I've copied it from here to here. You have to understand there are a few things that you wanted to make dynamic in your case. Now, if I come back here, this line information, this could be dynamic. So when I send this information from a different application, I want to render this JSON, okay, in a constructive way or in a dynamic way. So if I move here, and how did I do that? Basically, that's what I wanted to tell you. So you can see here it has column sets, okay, and every column set has their own columns, okay. So let's circle back and see. So you can see it has three column set, right? One column set, two column set, three column set, right? So if I go back to my body, so that's the title text, and that is the information of the column. Okay, so if I collapse this, Now this information is for one row that you're getting over here. It contains the image, it contains the text, it contains the quantity and amount information on it. Okay, so if I go to the next tab, that's basically the information I was talking about. Now, if from your code you can render this JSON dynamically, and then instead of passing this value from in a hard coded way, instead of that you can pass it here as a variable. You can pass your item information from your code itself. Okay, but on a functional standpoint, let's understand what has happened here, right? And if I'm being a functional, I can create a UI like this. Okay, and I can send it to my technical and say, hey, this is what I want, and don't change the UI, but you make sure that these values here are dynamic, these values here are synced to other system, and these value is going to be the comment. I'm going to click here and it should create an order. Now let's understand what has happened here, right? The implication of it. The UI construction has become much easier. So now the technical doesn't have to do much of a practice or much of a thing to construct the UI. I mean, of course, he can do that using the JSON. He might have to do something else as well. But on the other hand, a simple UI like this for giving an input to the customer can be easily created. Now on the back end, you can now give it to the technical, and then they can start working on the part where to connect the dots, sending data from adaptive card to your backend application, right? Now this is one thing. One important point here, though, in the JSON is the image. Usually, the image tag, if I click here, if I go on the right, image basically comes from a URL. Okay, now it doesn't mean that you cannot put some dynamic images on it unless you haven't have them published. So in that case, I was struggling a bit here, so I just wanted to show you this. So just put this data colon image with the extension of your image, and use base64 encoding, and then after the comma you can pass your base64 code here. Okay, so in that case you should be able to get the image on the in the UI without publishing it on any portal or something. So yeah, again, something that you can also do from your code, right? You have the image within your data in the application, convert the image into base64 text, pass it through the JSON, right? So on a technical perspective, you still have to have a knowledge about JSON. On a functional perspective, you're helping your technical guys, in creating an information or creating a UI. Or on the other hand, understand this: a user can also create an adaptive card by themselves, and then they can say that, hey, this is my adaptive card. Can you align this in the backend with your application? Right? So hassle of creating a UI, easy user interface is going to be, minimized in some, I'll say, level. All right. Now let's see. Few parts of integration. So I'll say when I click on this button, I would like to run a post method, and then I would like to consume this URL. And in this URL, I would like to construct send this body. Now this is something where things go a bit technical. So let me come back to the Postman. What I have basically done here is when they click on that button, it should send the information back to my backend application. And this information could be dynamic as well. So basically I'm taking information from the adaptive card and sending it back to the business application. Okay, so this is where you have to construct this body. Okay, so you consume one URL using this, and like here I pass some hard-coded text. Instead of that, you can pass variables as well. Now by this time, let's understand how I did that. So for this, I'm going to open the sample data editor. So now you can see here it says created UTC view URL. Now these are variables. These are, I don't know, to be for JSON it's a property, but yeah, these are also variables for in a simple language for a UI. So now in this, let's say instead of, minimize these controls to make some space. Yeah. So let's say instead of item number, I want to use a variable. So I'll say curly braces, you have to put them twice, and then your variable name. Okay. So that's easy how it is, right? So you take the value of that variable and then you can use it there. So let's see how I can assign the value. So I'll say here, I click on this. Now, if I click on data context, so you can see whatever the variables are created on my sample data editor JSON, they are available here as well, right? So I'll show you one. If I go back and oh, sorry, wrong JSON. Go back to payload editor. Oh, sorry, data editor. And then I'll say var1 value, right? So now if I go back here, if I click here, if I click on data context, so now I can see the variable here. Okay, so that's how we basically align variables. So whenever you are going to call the variables or you are going to send the information here, when you pass the information, let's say I pass the information on this box as Ethan's desk. So the value of that variable, so I guess it's a bad example, should not be due date. Yeah, so the value of this variable is going to be Ethan's desk. Okay, so let's see what we did here and why do we need to create the HTTP request. So for that, I will have to come back to my um, Power Automate screen. Where it is? There we go. So uh, let's understand both the flows now, because now we have seen the requirement. How do we do that? So in my case, let's understand the first flow. I said release sales quote sample manually. So normally this will be triggered from your application. You have to construct the JSON and send it to the system. So once your UI is created, okay, for the sake of testing, you can go here and you'll say card payload editor, select all, copy it, okay, and then come back to your Power Automate or whatever screen you're on. Most of the things are easier. In my case, I've said I want to trigger this manually, and in here I've parsed the JSON. It's basically the JSON I'm going to use as the part of my data. This is not important, but the compose part, this is where you are going to use the JSON I've just copied. Okay, so you put all those variables here, so I can see that's the base64 text. It's going to be the long box. Scroll down. So in here, you can see all the context I have, right? So basically, like I said, at the end, adaptive card becomes a JSON. It's a JSON based rendered card, a JSON based rendered UI. Okay, so at the end, you're not sending your boxes and screens that you are creating. At the end, you're sending the JSON, which is going to be rendered as a UI. Okay, so now let's see how on Outlook we can render this, because if you copy paste it normally, it's going to just send as a text. So if I scroll down and I've used a simple flow, I'll send a email to, let's say in my case, myself. So in your Outlook, when you are drafting your email, if you say this script and the type of script, because at the end, the body of Outlook is basically an HTML, right? So I'll say script type equals application slash adaptive card plus JSON, right? And after that, that is going to be my JSON, this output variable that I get from here. That's my JSON. So instead of this, you can also copy paste that JSON here, but I just wanted to show you how the tags are there. And then at the end, you have to close this. So like I said in the beginning, you don't really have to use Power Automate for doing all this. Instead of that, you can use any other application. Okay, so you can construct this email from your code, take any other language. If you put a script tag like this, for how I did that, you don't really need our Power Automate for this, right? So you can use any other platform for doing this. So if let's take an example, if I'm doing this from Salesforce, right? I have to construct the JSON the way I did here, and then I call the my email sending function or module, something like that. I'm not really familiar with Salesforce technical side, and then I will say pass this value uh, as a mail body. Okay. All right. So that's one thing. So once I do that, at the end, it has constructed this email body as an adaptive card, like I did here. Okay. So that's one of the flows I did. Now let's understand, why do I need to create that HTTP button? Okay. So the moment that HTTP button got clicked, it has called a URL. Now this takes me to my next flow. Okay. So in this case, I'm creating a sales order from the adaptive card. So once that button was clicked, it's basically calling this API. So again, you don't really need Automate for this. You can use your own API, call it from there. Okay. It's going to call this API. It has a predefined body. I don't really have to tell you all this, but yeah, feel free to go through the GitHub repository if you want to see what I did on the HTTP flows. Then again, pass the JSON. Okay. You have to use this, blah, blah, blah. And at this point, it's basically constructing the sales order. Okay. And you can see from the JSON that was in the body, I've used the due date. Okay. Again, guys, I'm not explaining you the part of JSON that I have used to construct all this, but yeah, feel free to browse through the GitHub repository. It's on the link within the video. Feel free to browse it and see what I did there. Okay, it will give you an idea. All right. So that's one thing. That's where I have created the sales order. Now, since I also have lines in my body, so I'm going to loop through these lines, and in here I'll say this line one, then use item number from that body and use the quantity. It can have other values, but just like I said, it's a POC. So once I have this, I have created my sales order till this stage, right? Now the next part was, as you can see in my initial step that I've shown you, is that I'm sending another adaptive card to him. And in this case, I'm sending him the information that I have just created. Let's go back for a second and see how I did this. And again, doing it on a technical basis, it might need you to unlearn the understanding of HTML and all those things. But let's see how quickly I created this one. So I went to my adaptive card. I just took a blank adaptive card, created a box, write this text, use this information, right? Written this text, created this button, added a URL. Now this URL can be different in your case because I'm using it to just show a file from OneDrive. But yeah, make it dynamic, use the variables and whatnot that you wanted to. Okay, so once I have this in place, I can again send it to my dev team and say, hey, this is going to be the order information. It's going to be very obvious, right? You just created an order, send this could be the document number of the order, this could be the receipt date, and that's going to be my order amount. And when I click on this, it should export that order as a PDF. Now, for a technical, this is very easier to understand. It takes a lot of time for them to create a UI, and that is where the customer or the functionals can help them through, right? And that's actually the power of adaptive card, right? Again, now this time as well, I will have the payload editor. I will have the JSON. I can copy it. I'll go back to my flow. And remember, this time my flow has created the sales header and the sales line, right? So I'll go down, I'll compose another JSON, right? And then I'm going to send another email. And this time, the body of my email will be my second adaptive card, right? So on a long scale, what I have done here is that I used another application. It basically creates sends an information on Outlook, and on Outlook, it basically gives the person who can be basically my customer my quotation. He can update the information and send it back to me. Okay, and then once he send that back to me, and it's going to create an order. It's going to send back the information that hey, your order has been created, and now you can export it as a PDF. Now all these things are done, and to be honest, up until now, again, like I said before, I have my VS Code open here, but just that's to just show you how I did that using the JSON and how I constructed the JSON. But to be honest, I have not used a single line of code in doing all this activity. Again, I'm not saying it's going to be robust enough. You might have to do something in the backend, but you can understand the gravity of how minimum that development is going to be for you, right? So yeah, that is it, guys. I hope you liked the video, and yeah, I wish you good luck. Thank you for joining. Bye.